Hi, all of you wonderful scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diver Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have piqued my interest over the previous week. This week, reports are surfacing that 17 people had to be rescued by the Indonesian Navy after the Grand Komodo-owned liveaboard, the Putri Papau, sank off the coast of Sorong in southwest Papua on Monday morning. So another liveaboard has sunk. A humpback whale entangled in ropes on a sky fish farm has been freed by volunteers from the BDMLR. And towards the end of January, a Russian mermaid named Maria Zelenia went viral after a fish violently chomped on her head during a performance of her underwater mermaid show in China. So the first news story is, the reports of another liveaboard sinking. It's been a lot in recent months. This one is the Putri Papua, which is run by Grand Komodo, and I actually tried going on their website page for it, and it says the website's under maintenance. According to local media outlets, Indonesian Naval Fleet Command received a WhatsApp notification at 5:47 a.m. with information that the liveaboard had suffered damage to its engine. On board the 26-meter long Finisi class yacht, which caters to a maximum of just 9 divers, were 8 Indonesian crew members, 3 Indonesian nationals, and 6 foreign passengers. Patrol vessel, Mata Bongsang 873 was dispatched to the reported location, arriving at 7:22 a.m. to find that the liveaboard was no longer at the coordinates first received. The patrol boat's crew spotted smoke from the liveaboard's damaged engine at 7:46 a.m., but the liveaboard was already sinking by the time they closed the distance, by which time the passengers, as some of the crew, had evacuated onto a life raft. Lieutenant Colonel Laut Ajik Sismianto, head of information service of Kormada 3, said that a lifeboat was deployed at 8 a.m. to rescue Putri Papua's remaining crew. It appears that most of those rescued escaped relatively unscathed, although 2 crew members were injured, quoting, consisting of one with nails being removed and the other experiencing trauma due to the ship's rubble, and were taken to the Naval Hospital in Sorong to receive medical attention. Of the 6 foreign passengers, 2 have been identified as English, 2 Austrian, and 2 Slovakian, according to the Indonesian Navy's report. So another liveaboard sinking, which is terrible news, and news that I seem to be reporting quite frequently nowadays. Apparently due to engine failure, which I can only presume, and I am just assuming at this point, led to a fire. I could be wrong, but just because your engine fails doesn't necessarily mean that the ship's going to sink. The liveaboard itself had sails, so it can run under sail power. So I presume there was some kind of issue there. Time will tell. It's still relatively new story. Hopefully, we'll manage to get some more information as time goes on. Some positive news. After a British humpback whale, which was entangled in ropes in a Skye fish farm, has been freed by volunteers from the British Divers Marine Life Rescue. BDMLR first heard of the animal's plight at 7 a.m. on the 30th of January, and by mid-afternoon, the first members of its large whale disentanglement team were already arriving at the Western Scottish Islands from around the UK, with more joining them overnight. Local BDMLR medics had been monitoring the 9-meter-long whale and working to ensure that members of the public did not approach it, while the Organic Sea Harvest Salmon Farm suspended its operations and reassigned staff to assist with the rescue effort. Underwater footage taken during the afternoon had revealed what the team members had originally taken to be a single loop of rope was in fact a double wrap, with one length around the whale's head and another trapping its left pectoral fin, with floats attached as well. This looked likely to make a difficult task even more challenging because the ropes would have to be cut in sequence to prevent the whale swimming away with the second line still attached. The volunteers reached the site in a small boat at first light the following day and determined that the whale's size, strength, and likely stress levels would make it an incautious approach dangerous. However, they managed to cut the sections of rope as planned, freeing the fin and then the head, although it took until 10:30 a.m. to complete the work. Initially, the whale appeared too exhausted to respond to its newfound freedom. Then it set off north, quote, swimming strongly, diving and returning to the surface. Still quoting, during the rescue, it became clear that the whale had previously been entangled and was carrying old ropes of a type not used by organic sea harvest. That was in a statement according to the fish farm. Further quoting, it was this existing entangled rope which caught onto the farm moorings as it swam by. Thankfully, the BDMLR team were not only able to free the whale from the salmon farm, but they were also able to free it from the other ropes it had been carrying. Marine mammals, including dolphins and whales, are a common sight near salmon farms, but it's extremely rare for them to come into contact with our sites. BDMLR also paid tribute to the Coast Guard, the Scottish Marine Animal Stranding Scheme, and a drone operator, Anthony Rigel, for their support during what it described as a difficult rescue. But yeah, a nice positive note, and it's basically one of these fish farms that's these like floating net pens out in the waterway, so the fish farm is not just in a lake somewhere. And yeah, because there's a lot of food in the water as they're feeding the salmon, that attracts other marine life, and yeah, it sounds like it already was this humpback whale was already entangled up in some rope, and because of that, it then got entangled in even more rope, and luckily someone noticed it, and the BDMLR were able to free it successfully. And finally, this is one that I almost made last week, but I didn't really have space for it. There was a video clip of a mermaid performer underwater, and she's just kind of doing her thing, and you just see this giant fish just swim up to her and literally try and eat her head. The poor girl, she makes it away. The fish like spits her out immediately, and she makes it straight back up to the surface. But oh, Struth, as far as like working conditions and potential hazards, that's got to be right up there. So this happened towards the end of January. She was a Russian mermaid named Maria Zelenia, and she was doing a performance underwater for a show in China. The video has been shared widely across Twitter and TikTok, racking up millions of views and concerned comments as people wonder how much she was compensated for the incident. The fish in question is a critically endangered Chinese sturgeon, and it's easily bigger than Maria. And after it bit her, she was rushed to the hospital after the fish attacked her. And in a statement, she said, "We had a show. I did the first solo. Another girl was waiting for me to do my solo. I almost finished it and was supposed to surface, but a fish pounced on me." This is all translated, I imagine. "I didn't understand what was going on. I began to push her away and get out of her mouth. When I surfaced, I realized I didn't have glasses." I presume referring to some kind of swim goggles so that she can see. Luckily, besides a few minor bumps and bruises, Maria, who I think performs under the like stage name of Masha, was left unscathed and isn't afraid to get back into the water once the doctor gave her the all clear. She noted, "I feel good. I remember this situation as a joke. I wasn't afraid of these fish." And when the story initially broke, there were rumors that her bosses forced her back to work and even threatened her to keep silent. But Maria has denied this, saying, quote, "Foreigners are treated very well here." Explaining, she added, "They also write that my superiors threatened me, but that's not the case either. Of course, they didn't want the whole country to know about it, but it was inevitable. It was unexpected. Of course, I was scared, but a lot of things can happen in life, and you need to treat it with humor." So Yeah, as with so many things nowadays, as soon as a news story breaks, a lot of people just throw out not even news reports. It's just, oh, I feel like, yeah, she's probably like been threatened by her bosses to keep quiet, but no, she's like, well, that clearly never happened. You do have to search around nowadays for news stories to confirm or deny things. So no, it just sounds like it was an incident. It happened. She's perfectly fine, and she's happy to go back into the water. I always remember another mermaid video that I saw. It's truth a while back now. This poor girl, her mermaid tail gets stuck in the like substrate. It gets caught because they have these big flowy mermaid tails that look very pretty as they like move through the water. But the bottom of it got snagged under a rock or something, and you see that immediate like, because they're holding their breath. It is just apnea freediving. And it was very quick. She like tugged on something, and the entire tail came off, and she just swims straight up to the surface. It's nice to know that it is quick and easy, because swimming in a monofin is very different to bifins. And yeah, granted they have a lot of experience and training, but still, I don't like monofins myself personally. But yeah, imagine getting like both of your legs tied together and then caught underwater whilst you're holding your breath. Yeah, she made it back up to the surface perfectly fine, but yeah, that one always sticks in my mind. That was about it as far as news stories. It's been a pretty quiet news week. As far as new dive gear as well, I don't think I've seen anything. The only thing that sticks in my mind is Shearwater announced they're making silicone protective covers for their, I think, the Peregrine and the Perdix, maybe the Petrel as well. I just saw them. They've been around for a while from like third-party manufacturers, but these are the first ones that Shearwater themselves are making. And I think it's just black and white. I could be wrong. I haven't done that much research into it. I just saw it and just thought, oh, okay. And it was actually under the Shearwater banner. So I was like, oh, okay, they're making their own, which is pretty cool. But yeah, as far as new actual dive equipment, nothing that I can talk about this week. So let's jump into some Ask Mark questions. So the first one comes from JMB5441. Can a person wear eyeglasses with a full face mask? Yeah. They're pretty common. You with a lot of full face masks, you'll notice on the inside they have special like mounting points where you have to buy a separate set of frames. But yeah, these frames they fit into the mask, and then you can pop lenses into them. You just like a lot of scuba diving masks, you can just get standard +2, +3, -2, whatever kind of lenses. Or you can, of course, just take them to your opticians and say, can you fit some lenses into this? And that way you don't have to bond the prescription lens directly onto your mask itself, because a lot of the time it isn't glass, it's a plastic material. So yeah, you don't want to screw around with that. But yes, you certainly can wear eyeglasses. I wouldn't wear like your reading spectacles with the arms and everything, because that might get quite uncomfortable, because the seal is going to press it into the side of your head. I have seen divers like break off the legs of their glasses, or at least cut them short so they do fit inside their diving mask. But yeah, you can certainly do it. And for the like fancier like Kirby Morgan ones, I've seen everything from like augmented reality. You get these lenses in front of your eyes, and the computer can actually like highlight things in the water, which is pretty cool. That's like the future of commercial diving. So yes, you can wear eyeglasses in a full face mask. Grant Car 1, I'm about to go on my first liveaboard since I restarted diving. There's been a 10-year gap, and I'm sure things have changed. Some things have changed. Does everyone take a second computer in case of failure? Not really. Do people hire them just for the trip? I'm assuming the liveaboards will make you have an extended surface interval if you have a failure, loss of your single dive computer. Yeah. I don't think it's particularly common for divers to bring a spare dive computer. If you have one, great. But I think it's pretty rare for divers to have more than one dive computer unless they're like a proper professional. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Liveaboard will make you have an extended surface interval. Yeah. If your dive computer fails, then you have no idea on your you can have a rough idea of your nitrogen saturation levels, but it is basically just wait 24 hours and then you can start using a second dive computer just in case. It's better to err on the side of caution. If you do have a second dive computer, it just means that you have to dive it on every single dive. It's not a matter of you can just leave it in your bag and then when your original fails, you just strap that one on, because your second dive computer that's been sat on dry land is assuming that you've never been diving, so it's going to give you the wrong information. So it is best to have that extended surface interval. But no, I don't think it's particularly common. Dive computers are pretty reliable nowadays. It's quite rare for them to flood unless you've just had the battery changed or something. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. You can rent a backup dive computer if you really want. It's not going to be particularly fancy, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. 391 Wombat asks, related question about what to do if your cylinder explodes. How do fire departments handle a fire at a dive shop? Very carefully. Lots of tanks and very possibly 100% oxygen. Let it burn and take cover. I don't know. I'm not a fireman. I'm sure they have procedures for buildings with compressed gas and 100% oxygen. As a dive center, we have to create, it may be different in different countries around the world, but yeah, for any kind of chemicals, if they deal with rebreathers a lot, then they may have softener lime in the building and various chemicals and stuff. If you're repairing dry suits, then you have all the different adhesives, and some of them are pretty volatile. So you have to create this document saying that these are all the chemicals in the building. This is where they're stored. Should anything happen, you should be able to hand that over to emergency services. I don't know what their procedures are. I assume they have special procedures already set. If I was in an adjacent building, I would like to be evacuated. It's. I don't know the exact procedures. You'd have to ask a fire department. But yeah, I imagine they have some kind of special procedures for that. Italian Dive Explorer says, can you recommend some dive computers that support air integration and side mount? Yeah. God's truth. I think the new Shearwater does. I think the Apex, the DSX, I think that has a side mount mode. The Garmin ones, they've got side mount modes. So the Descent Mark 3i. I don't know. If you Google it, I'm sure it'll come up, but those are the ones that spring to mind. The side mount one is quite rare. It is usually you can set up multiple cylinders on a dive computer, but you can't monitor them on the same screen simultaneously. Some computers will do it. Have a look around. But yeah, those are the ones that immediately spring to mind as might be having those kind of modes. Rancid Channel 3206. I know it seems a silly question with the safety checks on cylinders, but just wondered, had anyone dropped a cylinder, or if one had ever done, what the aftermath or procedure would maybe be. Maybe thanks for applying my tiny-minded self. It's always good to know what to do if the worst happens. I've seen cylinders dropped. We had one chap bring in a cylinder which wasn't his. He'd borrowed it from a friend. He'd stood it up on the tailgate of his truck, and it fell off and landed on the cylinder valve. I can't remember if it broke the handle off or whether it just deformed the DIN fitting. That was quite common because the metal is quite soft, especially if the entire steel cylinder falls on top of it. Yeah, it wasn't uncommon for the DIN fitting to be squished a bit, and you now can't fit a first stage into it. In that case, we would just drain the cylinder down, whack the valve out, and hydro test the cylinder just in case. We're checking the screw threads. We have go and no-go gauges that screw in. The go gauge obviously should screw in all the way. The no-go gauge will screw in like a couple of threads and then stop. We're checking the screw thread hasn't been stretched or bent in any way. Visual on the inside, and hydro test the cylinder to make sure it's still strong, and then we just fit a new valve into it, and that'll be fine. If you break the actual handle to open and close the valve off, you can usually still open up the valve. You get onto the inside, and as long as you can get a hold of the stem, you can usually rotate it and open the valve. And even if you need to open the valve, you can just replace the parts that are broken, and it's perfectly fine. Again, you test it, you hydro test it, because just because that's the thing that appears broken doesn't necessarily mean it's the only thing that's broken. So it's always worth testing a cylinder that's fallen. But yeah, I mean, a simple fall, as long as you can't see any visible dents or anything, I don't worry too much about it. But if you're ever unsure, it's always best just to get it tested, because as tough as cylinders are, you want to make sure they're tough. The only way to do that is to get it tested. At least that way you know that you're good for a certain period of time as well. I did hear story of one cylinder that came in and they could not drain it, and someone had to draw the short straw and drill into the valve. Of course, stories, you never know how true it is, but yeah, logically that's the only way. You'd never drill into the body of the cylinder, that's incredibly dangerous, but into the valve, that, as far as I understand, they had to work out where the channel comes through, and drill into that until they can relieve the pressure inside, and then swap that valve out. I think that was before my time at the dive center, and if that was going on, I would have been in a different building just in case. But yeah, it is just drain it down, test it, and replace whatever needs replacing. Crazy Taco 55. My family and I are going to be traveling to Curacao, is it named or pronounced? And just wanted to ask about storing rental tanks in a car or a van. We're going to be doing multiple shore dives, and we'll have extra tanks in our rental car. Just wondering what's the best way to store them, or is this a terrible idea because of how hot the car will get whilst we are diving? If cylinders explode in hot cars. In fact, nothing does very well in hot cars, whether it's dogs, children, dive equipment. There are stories of people's fins and whatnot, literally bending and warping because they've literally melted inside of a hot car. And of course, because you've got a sealed pressurized container, as the temperature increases, the pressure inside is going to increase, and eventually the pressure is going to get so high that the cylinder is going to fail, and that heat as well is affecting the strength of the cylinder, or the metal itself. So yeah, avoid it as much as possible. Best case scenario, you can have your car parked I don't know, in an underground car park, somewhere in the shade, and have everything like covered over so that the temperature inside the car doesn't increase that much. If that isn't an option, then my mind goes to bringing the cylinders with me in the water. If you don't want to carry them for the entire dive, then kind of try and find somewhere to secure them in the water, so at least the water is keeping them cool. Tie them down somewhere, anchor them to something, and like put a DSMB attached to it or something, so it's a bit easier to find. But yeah, avoid it. Hot cars as much as possible, because especially if it's a rental car, yeah, if the cylinder explodes, you're paying for the rental cylinder, you're paying for the rental car, you're paying for any damage in the vicinity. Yeah, that's going to be a really expensive mistake, and yeah, it's really not worth it. A Faro Yave 90. I apologise if I pronounced that wrong. For the best image and colour contrast, which masks would you recommend? I'm thinking between the Venom Arc, the Paragon S, or the Scuba Pro Synergy 2 Mirrored. I'd avoid the mirrored lenses and the Paragon S, the Tusa Paragon, because they actively filter out certain wavelengths of light. Think of the Paragon and the Synergy 2 mirrored masks as like sunglasses. They filter out certain wavelengths of light which can be harmful to your eyes. It's usually the blues, the like ultraviolet, which can damage your eyes, so they act a bit more like sunglasses. So when you're diving in like really bright sunny conditions, it helps to protect your eyes. Whereas the Atomic Venom Arc masks, the ARC in ARC stands for anti-reflective coating. So on the inside and the outside of the glass lens, they have a special coating. I don't know how it works, but it means that the glass doesn't reflect light. It allows more light to transfer through the glass, and that way more light is actually getting into your eyes. So that's the best for image and like color contrast, because you're actively seeing like that's exactly what's in front of you. It even reduces the they call it a ghost reflection, where sometimes when the light is coming in at a certain angle, you can see your own eye in the glass lens in front of you, which is kind of weird. It reduces that because, again, the light isn't reflecting on the internal surface of the glass. So yeah, you don't get that quite as much. So yeah, I'd go for the Atomic Venom Arc if that's your best like requirements. You really want the best image and color contrast. There are plenty of like what's the word, like treated tinted lenses, and whilst they do have their place, personally I just prefer basic glass. I mean, I know I said basic glass. The Venom Arc has crystal Scott glass with fewer impurities in it, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of like fancy treatment lenses and stuff, especially mirrored ones, because I want my dive buddy to be able to see my eyes. I think that's like the instructor inside of me, because your eyes can like calm people down. If they just see a reflection of themselves whilst they're freaking out, then yeah, that just makes things worse. So yeah, I just tend to go with like regular see-through glass lenses. And that's it for another week. We do have a new special offer on, actually. If you're traveling around and you need an eSIM, we're working with a company called Airlo, which I've used before, and it basically, with phones nowadays, you get your SIM card, but now you can have like a digital version of that, which it is quite quick and easy. You download the app, and literally when I was in the States for DEMA, yeah, I basically got an American SIM card without having to visit a shop or anything. And yeah, you can use data, you can make phone calls and stuff as if you have an American SIM card. And yeah, we're offering 15% off all of their eSIMs. So yeah, if you use the code Scuba Diver Mag on their website, I'll pop a link down in the description. But yeah, that's new and something that I'll be using when I travel abroad. Yeah, links will be down in the description below. Thank you for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.